Coming to you from Beach City Life, and I'm here with a very interesting man by the name of Bruce Stubbs. Bruce, you're with R&R Strategic, and you do some of the financing in and around the precinct. Is that right?
Yes. I'm the CEO and founder of R&R Strategic, and we provide funding and fast-track acceleration services to technology startups.
Okay, that's very good. And we were just having a little bit of a chat before, and you were telling me about some of the challenges that early stage companies have, particularly in the Australian market. I think, is it specific to the Australian market, do you think?
It's specific all over, but it's much harder in the Australian market. Basically, we founded R&R Strategic for two reasons. These bright young kids that want to start their technology startups need two things: grey hair and money, and we provide both. So we see if we can get strategic clarity with them, and that is whether they've got a commercial viable, scalable model. We then get them investment ready. If we can do that, we can get funding, and then we help fast-track the execution phase, which is bringing forward revenue and getting customers as quickly as possible. We solve all of those four problems for startups, and we're in the precinct here as part of the Capital Corner at the Advanced Queensland Hub.
Fantastic. And can you just give us a little bit of colour and background to how you got to R&R Strategic and what your background has been?
I've been 35 years in the financial services industry in Australia. I have an MBA in finance and law, and basically we're bringing that discipline that the big end of town uses to do capital raisings and IPOs right down to this startup space. So we're bringing it right down to the micro level, which is what's needed for successful funding, and this is why 99 out of every 100 startups fail at funding. It's not because necessarily their ideas are not commercial, they're not smart enough to execute, but they don't make it investor friendly. They don't necessarily know or apply the governance that's required nowadays to successfully raise money.
And I guess we're seeing a little bit of a startup gold rush. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and everyone wants to be a startup. And we were talking earlier about the fact that one of the biggest challenges is the funnel of deals that come through and managing that deal flow and then being able to filter that. So what's the things that you look for when somebody is coming to you with a deal?
Well, there's a number of criteria. It needs to be scalable technology, but the most important criteria of them all is, are we prepared to back the individual? Does he have the capacity to deliver? Is he a true entrepreneur? And if he's not or almost there, well, we try and figure out what he needs to help him, because we know that he can't do it on his own.
That's an interesting. So what does a true entrepreneur look like to you?
All different shapes and sizes. But it's more that they have or found a disruptive idea to an industry which is prime for disruption. We're very attracted to that.
Now, I can speak from personal experience. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's a tough gig, right? I think people see the unicorn, the billion-dollar businesses, the Ferraris, and the big money that we hear being raised, and it's disappointing to me that some of those raises are sort of worn as a badge of honour and positioned as, I've raised 400 million, so now I'm successful. What's your view on that?
That's the old school model. That's the 80s, 90s model. That's the pre-GFC model. The unicorns are rare, and you don't see many of them. But there's a very deep and liquid market in that 30 to 50 million range, which is not unicorn status, but it's still 10, 20, 30 times multiple if you get it right. And that's what we try and back, those winners. And we do it by building a portfolio of startups rather than just trying to pick the next unicorn, because we really don't know who's going to be successful, who's not. So if they meet our criteria and we really like the founders, we'll back them.
So founder, the people is the number one criteria. It's got to be about the people, and there's got to be some passion and drive there, that when things are tough, the back's to the wall, and you've got to make payroll on Monday, and somehow you've got to transfer money from one credit card to the other credit card to pay the other credit card off. You've got to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do that.
Well, when Russell and Kogan started Kogan, and he'll tell you this story, Bankcard had just come to Australia, and they were dishing out bank cards to everybody with a $2,000 credit limit. So he rounded up 30 of his mates, and suddenly he had $60,000 worth of working capital. It's beyond that now. There is money here, but the money needs to be accessed and de-risked for the investor. So we do all that due diligence, governing and structuring to make it the runway clear for the investors to come into this space, because they want to come into this space. They just don't know how, and they're not prepared or don't have the time to do the due diligence that's required for a single investment. So we do that with our Australian Financial Services Licence, AFSL. We do that for them. We factor it amongst 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 investors, and there's the funding round.
Right. And that's pretty important that you do have the AFL licence from that perspective.
Absolutely. That keeps everyone compliant. That keeps everyone out of jail. And it means the VC funds will accept our documentation, our structuring and our compliance when we pass the startup, if it's successful, and gaining traction, we pass it up the food chain so the startups can do a successful Series A, B or C round with a VC, either here or overseas.
So one of the things I've found, and I'm interested to hear your views on this, is that the Australian investment market has been particularly geared towards mining and exploration companies, and obviously the ASX is a listed place. There's not a lot of that type of private money in VC that we've seen in the Valley. And having done my fair share of road showing and pitching ideas to people, I find it interesting that they go, yeah, we understand the tech, so when do we start digging the copper out? Do you think that there's an education side of it, and do you think that we're moving beyond that now?
Well, there's two issues there you raise. One is that Australia can no longer rely on digging stuff up and selling it overseas. The second thing, Australia can no longer rely on buying and selling each other houses. We have to create value. And Advance Queensland, which is the state government initiative that sponsored this precinct, believes that job creation can only be enabled through these successful technology startups based here in Queensland, creating the job growth here in Queensland. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's a portfolio approach, so investors and self-managed super funds will invest in this space if it can be shown that it can be de-risked. So R&R's role as a AFSL intermediary is to de-risk the startup as much as we can by providing them the resources they need, both financial, manpower and other, and building a portfolio for investors on the other side.
Well, I think that what you're doing is awesome, because and I do a lot of mentoring, and the number one question I get is, how do we set this company, this structure up? How do we do the due diligence to get it into a place that is investor ready? And that is not a simple answer that you can answer in one mentor session. So R&R Strategic, doing excellent work. I've got one more question for you. It's two parts. Beach City is all about lifestyle and balancing lifestyle with entrepreneurship, and really validating that it is a real path that you can take outside of if you leave school or university, and you don't have to go to a corporate job. You can become an entrepreneur, and there are people out there that will help you. So lifestyle is an important thing. Two questions we'd like to ask everybody. Your favourite beach in the world, part A, and part B, your favourite city in the world.
My favourite beach in the world is Noosa, because I have a house there. My favourite place to live is southeast Queensland and the environment around, because of the climate and lifestyle and so forth.
But if you had a city in the world that you went to, that you visited on your travels, that it was exciting and that you thought, wow, that's a great city, what would that be?
I think cities, it's more than just cities now for the reasons you outlined in terms of lifestyle. It's the city and the environs around it. Right. A bit like Rome and the environs around it. A city in itself, you need to escape from to maintain that balance. So it's more or less the region with a city in the middle of it. So there are a number of those around the world. You could say the same about New York with the lovely environs it has around it in the New England states. Colorado is a very beautiful part of the world, and if I was wealthy enough, I'd spend half the year in southeast Queensland and the other half in Colorado. So that's the answer to my question.
Well, I'm with you. In fact, we've got a correspondent at Boulder at the moment doing the Startup Weekend covering that. So we've got some great content on Beach City Life. So follow at Beach City Life. Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. R&R Strategic, doing some awesome work, and for any startups out there, this is a must video for you to watch. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Cheers.